This is the brand new iPad Air. It's the 5th gen, the one that Apple just announced not too long ago. And I already unpackaged it and took everything off because I recorded this video already and the audio, for some weird reason, decided to not record along with it. Now inside the box, you get the new color, this blue color. I think it looks super awesome. It's not a dark blue or bright blue, but I think it looks really classy. In terms of form factor and design, it's not much different than the previous one. In fact, it's pretty much the same dimensions. You also get your paperwork inside of the box, and because this is the cellular model, this one does have a SIM card so you can place in your SIM. You have your charger, exact same one as the iPad Air 4, and of course, your USB Type-C cable, capable of transferring up to 10 gigabits per second. Now, to give you an idea of what this iPad looks like compared to the old one, I have the old one here as well, and this one happens to be in a space gray. I apologize about all the dirtiness. My son uses it very religiously, and you can see here that the blue just looks a bit more classy. These lines you see at the top and bottom of both iPads are cellular antenna lines. It allows you to get reception when you have a chip inside. But the big deal is when you go with the newer iPad, you're getting 5G, whereas the previous version capped out at LTE. Now this is 5G, but it doesn't support millimeter wave and it only does sub-6. Cameras are exactly the same. They're both 12 megapixels, same exact hardware, but apparently the newer iPad Air has extended dynamic range, so in certain shots using computational photography, it should technically look better. You still have the same placement for the key connector, and the thinness of both iPads are identical. There's really no difference in terms of dimensions. It is a bit heavier, like 1.02 pounds compared to 1.01 with the previous iPad, but you're really not going to notice that when you're holding both in your hand. Now I have some of Apple's other iPads on the table, the bigger iPad Pro and then the smaller iPad mini. 12 inches compared to 10.9 you get with the 5th gen Air. Same screen size as the previous iPad Air. No difference in terms of display technology. It's still IPS, still about 600 nits of brightness, supports True Tone. 60 Hertz, so it doesn't have that ProMotion or high refresh rate display that the Pro has, so kind of similar to the iPad mini. Now they did make a change to the front-facing camera. On the previous iPad Air, it was 7 megapixels and it did not support center stage. This one has been upgraded to 12 and you can now use center stage with it. What that basically means is if you're on a conference call or you're using the video camera capabilities, the camera will follow you around, so it always keeps you in frame. The only thing I wish they kind of changed was the placement of the camera. Like if you're holding it in portrait mode, which most people don't do when they're on a conference call, the camera ends up being on the side when you place it on landscape. I would have loved to have the camera over here instead because it would keep you in frame properly. Speakers are the same, 2 speakers on the bottom of the device. There's no change in terms of sound quality. If you want the best speakers possible, you got to go with the iPad Pro, which seems to have 4. But some of the cool little things that Apple does are in the finer details. For example, when you're holding the iPad in portrait mode, you have 2 volume buttons at the top. When you press the top one, the volume goes up as it should. But as soon as you turn the tablet in landscape mode, that top volume button all of a sudden becomes the down volume button. So it kind of follows your orientation, which is really smart. In terms of accessories, if you have an old iPad Air and you want to reuse some of those accessories on the new one, they will work. You don't have to go out and buy new ones. For example, this is an old iPad Pro Magic Keyboard and it works perfectly with the newest iPad Air. It clicks on, it lines up, everything looks great. The camera on the back is situated in the correct position, so you don't have to spend more money on accessories, which is always a good thing. But the biggest update to this guy is the CPU that's inside of here. The old iPad Air was using the A14 Bionic, a great chip. 2 performance cores, 4 efficiency cores. It still runs circles around most Android phones. So if you're watching this video and you're still rocking a 4th gen iPad Air, you don't need to upgrade. Like, I promise you, your iPad is still gonna be fast for years to come. The new version of this has an M1, the exact same processor you'd find in the newer iPad Pro, the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro 13. This has 4 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. Now I will say this, one thing I don't like is the storage options. There's basically 2, right? You either get it at 64 gigabytes and then you get pushed up to 256 if you want more storage, and you end up having to spend $150 more. There's no 128 gigabyte model, and Apple purposely does this to upsell you to more storage. Here's what I have to say. You can get away with 64 gigabytes if you're just buying this for general stuff like writing notes, browsing the web, and answering emails. 64 is good enough. But as soon as you start downloading a lot of games, like for example, Genshin takes up like 16 gigabytes and Apex Legends Mobile is coming to this and a bunch of other stuff, then yeah, you're gonna want to spend more money on the 256 gigabyte version. But if you're just doing general stuff, you can probably get away with 64. Interestingly, I did discover that this new iPad Air is using 8 gigabytes of RAM, and this is double the amount of RAM compared to the previous iPad. So there's some good longevity here. Now, if you have an old iPad Air 4th gen, do not get jealous. Please don't. Your iPad Air is still really fast, okay? And it's gonna last you years to come. Anyways, that's a first look and unboxing of the new iPad Air. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.